As Lewis Hamilton himself said, Silverstone will be a very important track for Ferrari to see the steps forward of the new bottom. And in today's video, we are going to see Hamilton's statements, those of Vasseur, on the rear suspension, because there are updates on this. How they are working on it in Ferrari, the updates from Aston Martin and Sauber. Before we start with the video, please leave a like, and now let's get started. After Austria, now comes the good part. Silverstone is the true test of Ferrari's maturity. The English weekend will be more than just another race on the calendar. It will be the ultimate test to understand if the quality leap seen in Spielberg is really structural or just a temporary illusion favored by favorable circumstances. Fred Vasseur is an expert in managing weekends and executing every phase flawlessly. From strategy to fine-tuning through the interpretation of updates, it is today the real balance needle. And in Maranello, they finally understood this. In Spielberg, the Scuderia Ferrari 25 showed an almost unexpected solidity. The new fund worked, the strategy was clear. And what's even more important, all the direct opponents stayed behind except for McLaren, which remains the real antagonist at this moment. Mercedes once again out of phase, with obvious temperature management problems and an Antonelli forced to retire. Red Bull out of the game after 3 turns, but Silverstone won't give any discounts, and for this reason Ferrari can't afford a setback. Silverstone is a circuit that rewards true aerodynamic load, stable throughout the entire lap. It's a technical and psychological test bench, and the Scuderia Ferrari 25 so far has shown clear limits in high lateral load situations and high-speed direction changes. You can't bluff here, either you have the right load or you get paved over. Turns like Magot's Beckett's require precision and rear stability. And above all, a car that remains composed when changing direction at 280 per hour. And if there's a point where the Ferrari 2025 suffers, it's exactly this. The Scuderia Ferrari 25 has a narrower aerodynamic operating window compared to Red Bull and McLaren. In other words, either you're perfect with the ground clearance, mechanical stiffness, the angle of the bottom, and the incidence of the wing, or you lose. Tenths at every turn, and at Silverstone, every tenth is multiplied. The load from the bottom is crucial, but the Modena car has shown limits in generating it under non-ideal conditions. The balance between front and rear is unstable, and we know how ruthless Silverstone can be in stressing the front end during insertion. Since the season started, a major flaw of the SFD5 has been chronic understeer. It was mitigated at Spielberg, but at Silverstone, where fast curves follow one another and the front is constantly stressed, that problem could come back strongly. If you can't get the car to rotate when entering, you lose all the rhythm. It's a domino effect. Losing trajectory and acceleration on exit allows them to overtake you on the straight. This is the biggest risk for Leclerc and Hamilton, especially considering that the English track also requires a difficult compromise between aerodynamic load and top speed. You have to sacrifice the rear wing, but if you don't have load from the bottom, it's suicide. However, there is a positive side: tire wear. At Silverstone, the fast curves will severely impact the Pirellis, especially on the left side. The degradation will be high, and paradoxically, this could help Ferrari. Why? The Scuderia Ferrari 25, as it is designed, tends to put less energy into the tires, just like last year's Scuderia Ferrari 24. If the others start to slide after 10 laps, Hamilton might still have an advantage, as was partly seen in Austria. And if this improvement in tire thermal management is real, then the Rossa could have something concrete to play for in the race. However, be careful, the compounds will be softer than in 2024, and this makes the management even more sensitive. Will a slip up in the setup or a climate change be enough to blow everything up? And the weather could indeed come into play, with a 40% chance of rain between Saturday and Sunday. Qualifying results were impacted by the shaking, though not severely. The main problem remains the activation of the front tires. The Scuderia Ferrari 25 struggles in the first turns. When the tires are not yet at their peak grip, the rear end heats up faster, creating imbalance and nervousness. Silverstone's complex first sector is unforgiving. A perfect warm-up is needed, surgical management of the launched laps, and a setup that allows the front tires to immediately enter the right window. Starting from behind makes catching up difficult, particularly when trailing the McLarens. And then there's Lewis Hamilton, who has won 8 times at Silverstone and has been on the podium 11 times in a row. It's his home track, which he knows better than anyone. Now he's back as a Ferrari driver. If there's an opportunity to motivate him beyond the limit and see him as in China, well, this race could be just the British Grand Prix. And Ferrari has every interest in exploiting that adrenaline, because every point at this stage is gold, especially in the constructors' standings where Ferrari is aiming for second place. The new rear suspension will arrive at Spa, but as of now, it's crucial to maximize the car package that we currently have, and see if the new floor can also give the hoped-for results at Silverstone. Every detail will be crucial, from the balance to the setup, from the tire strategy to the interpretation of the track. Everything has to be aligned, and there's no more room for a wasted weekend. 2025 must be the year of rebirth. Instead, Hamilton shows up at Silverstone with only one sharp warning to his credit: the sprint in China. The rest has been a mix of technical difficulties, complicated adaptation, and growing frustration. No one expected an easy transition after 11 years at Mercedes, but neither such a flat impact. To date, Hamilton has never really beaten Leclerc. He is almost always behind in the race, even when he starts ahead. The internal comparison with Charles, who knows Ferrari best, is growing uncomfortable. The Brit himself has admitted that he can't make the Scuderia Ferrari 25 work with his style, and that's no small detail. Hamilton now openly confirms what he had previously implied. He is not comfortable with this Ferrari. The Scuderia Ferrari 25 project, which some defined as modeled on his needs, is actually proving to be hostile ground. Lewis tried to copy Leclerc's style even with the management of the rear skid, but the result was only an unmanageable tire degradation. And it's not just a matter of driving. Hamilton has openly talked about setup, balance, feeling with the car. He even mentioned Carlos Sainz, saying that the Spaniard took 2 years to really understand Ferrari. A statement that almost sounds like a request for patience. But at 40 years old with his track record, can he really afford to wait 2 seasons? Silverstone is certainly the most important circuit of his career, the place where he made history. Last year he returned to victory after nearly 3 years of drought. To him, Silverstone isn't merely a track, no, it's a weapon, refuge and personal temple. But in 2025, the context is completely different. The Scuderia Ferrari 25 is unstable, the balance is fragile, and the confidence is not there. Yet Hamilton knows he can't afford another weekend as a supporting actor. He must beat Leclerc at least once to prove the old lion still exists. Silverstone will also test his side of the box. Hamilton's men need to find a setup that restores his confidence. Winning is not necessary, but strong signals are needed, otherwise this new chapter in red risks becoming just a long, slow disappointment. In the post-Austria, Hamilton made it clear Leclerc can drive even with an unstable car. He can't. A more manageable and predictable car is needed to address this structural problem. But we all know that the Scuderia Ferrari 25 will not be revolutionized from here to the end of the season. Hamilton must adapt, or he will be outshone by the Monegasque driver throughout 2025. Lewis is subtly hinting that he's already focusing on the 2026 season. His statement suggests that he's looking for a horizon, a new motivation, and Silverstone could be the turning point. A bit of a pole, or even just a solid race ahead of his teammate would be enough to reignite the flame. Hamilton is running out of time. The potential Ferrari dream may end prematurely. The England Grand Prix is a chance to shift the narrative, as rumors, doubts and questions about the future will start after Silverstone. And if he can't afford to stay in the middle of the group with his head down and his helmet full of questions, either reacts now or it will be too late. And he said it himself. Silverstone is my second skin, and this year I wear it in red, he declared. Here I have lived some of the most beautiful moments of my career, and now returning with the red suit is something really special. Silverstone is much more than a circuit for him. He said it himself to Copse, Maggots and Beckett's. He literally flies. He has a unique feeling of flying, and he himself says he has an extra gear in those stretches. And the thing that pushes him the most is the English cheering. In fact, in England, all his fans push him and give him a unique motivation. And it's the same thing he experienced last year with the victory. Hamilton has signed with Ferrari to make history by leading the team to the top and ending his career in an iconic fashion. After 11 Grand Prix, the reality is harsh. No podiums in red, with the sole highlight being the sprint victory in China.
But be careful.
That from 2014 to 2024, Lewis has always made it to the podium at
Silverstone 11
times in a row. So we'll see if Hamilton will be able to make a podium at Silverstone and not break his streak. Hamilton has set a new personal worst of 13 consecutive races without a podium finish. An unthinkable statistic until recently, but now it's reality. His last significant top 3 finish was second place in Las Vegas 2024. He's had no success since then. In short, Silverstone will be an important crossroads for Lewis, who will need to turn his season around, and also that of Ferrari. But we also need to talk about the rear suspension announced by Fred Vasseur, which will arrive at Spa. How will it change the behavior of the Ferrari? In the end, it came after months of silence, half sentences and rumors. Frederic Vasseur breaks the wall and confirms what everyone was waiting for. The new rear suspension of the Scuderia Ferrari 25 is ready and will debut at Spa. This modification has a direct impact on the entire aerodynamic operation of the car. In fact, Vasa clearly states it so we can better control the ground clearance and stay within the optimal window of our aerodynamic platform. It took 2 months of waiting when Autoracer confirmed at the beginning of May about this new rear suspension
to solve
the root mechanical frame instabilities of the Scuderia Ferrari 25. The suspension will be beneficial for 2026 according to Vasseur. And the feeling was clear, Ferrari is working, but they don't want to reveal anything until the last moment. The goal is clear with this suspension, as Vasseur was saying, we will be able to better control the height of the vehicle. Formula 1 enthusiasts know that ground clearance is crucial for the performance of ground effect single-seaters. Just go a few millimeters out of the ideal window and the aerodynamic load collapses, the car bounces, slides, degrades the tires, it's a domino effect. And the Scuderia Ferrari 25 has so far lived this nightmare. The rear instability on fast tracks, the difficulty in making the bottom work consistently, the problems in high-speed corners, like the Beckett or the S's of Japan. Everything comes from a platform that doesn't stay flat when needed. And here comes into play the new suspension
that is needed
as a weapon to keep the car glued to the track. If successful, Ferrari may gain tenths on entry, improve stability, and maintain consistent pace throughout the race. Spa was not chosen by chance. In fact, it is a track that, with its ups and downs, with extreme pressures and speeds, really tests the aerodynamic consistency of the single-seater. If the new suspension works there, then it can work anywhere. It's a direct challenge to the logic of Red Bull and McLaren. Moreover, the update comes just before the summer break, which means that Ferrari will be able to collect data, analyze it, and decide whether to bring other developments related to this change for the second part of the season. In fact, this will be Ferrari's most important test of the year. If Ferrari's rear suspension works at Spa, then it can work a bit
anywhere, because
with the ups, downs, and curbs, such as the bus stop that you have to navigate at Spa, there are several points with all different curves.
Fast curves,
slow curves. It's a track with many ups and downs, many dips, and this is used to test the kinematics of the suspension. If Ferrari were to run lower and not have the wear problems of the plank, it could gain many tenths and go faster. Perhaps even worry McLaren for the win and remain constant in the fight for the podium. This is the hope that is given to Ferrari, which, among other things, this rear suspension will also be reused next year, because mechanically it will remain more or less the same. But let's discuss McLaren's performance at Silverstone. The Silverstone Cops, Maggots, Becketts, and Stowe curves are the ideal terrain for the MCL 39. The aerodynamic balance between front and rear is perfect. The car responds with agility to changes in direction. Without losing composure, the rear is stable and precise, glued to the trajectory. It's the characteristic that Ferrari, for example, is still trying to achieve. The update brought to Austria has further improved the load on the front axle, allowing impeccable tire management. This makes a world of difference on a track like Silverstone. However, a shadow looms in the McLaren pit. The graining of the tires, especially on the front left. In Canada, it caused problems. And Silverstone, with its continuous lateral stress, could bring the phenomenon back to the center of the scene. Certainly, the softer C2, C3, C4 tires compared to last year could lead to greater tire degradation and therefore more stress. So the only thing that can ruin McLaren's perfect weekend is indeed the graining. Norris remains the favorite at his home track, Silverstone, where he has always been strong. But the risk is not managing the tires perfectly and losing everything strategically. We also saw the special livery for the home Grand Prix of the team, that is the Chrome livery, which is a symbol of the Golden Age. Signed by Hamilton in 2008 with McLaren, and we remember the MP423 of 2008, which was the last McLaren world champion with the silver livery. And this particular library is not a random signal. It's to reiterate that this year McLaren will win the title either with Norris or with Piastri, but they will return as World Drivers' Champions. It's a direct announcement, a challenge to the opponents, but watch out for updates from Aston Martin and Sauber, which are the two teams that have grown the most recently. The last major evolution of this year's Aston Martin Racing 25 will arrive at Silverstone. After months of work, Lawrence Stroll's team launches a new fund and an updated bodywork to seek the final leap in quality. Before fully focusing on 2026, the 2025 car is more drivable, more predictable than the 2024 one. It's a shame that to achieve this ease of driving, Aston Martin sacrificed too much pure aerodynamic load. The single-seater in the early races had one of the worst progress deltas compared to 2024. Easy to drive, but too far from the points zone. That's why the first major package arrived at Imola. Afterwards, we also saw the appearance of Adria Nui in Monaco. And from May onwards, Aston Martin has significantly improved, consistently fighting for the top 10. And now comes the last major update of this season, the new bottom of Aston Martin.
To improve
The quality of the flow around the rear tires and improve the stability of the single-seater in traction and in the lateral load phase, which are two critical areas of Aston Martin. Immoral focus had been on the upper profile of the body. Here instead, work is done on the bottom, extractor and vortex mapping. And it is no coincidence that all this comes in the home race in front of the eyes of the engineers and designers who work in the new Silverstone factory. Right there, the new shapes of the bottom were validated in the wind tunnel. The goal is to consolidate Aston Martin and the fight in the middle group, then aim for something more next year with the first real car developed by Adrian Newey. And also watch out for Sauber, who will bring further developments to England after the updates already brought to Austria and also to Barcelona. In fact, Hülkenberg has stated the hard work is starting to pay off race after race. We are growing in every area. We saw in Spielberg how Sauber was consistently in the top 10 both with Hülkenberg and with Bortoleto. We saw the first points that arrived in Spielberg in Austria for Bortoleto. And this is just the beginning. So Matteo Binotto's project has also started to see something more next year with the arrival of Audi. And even James Walsh, team principal of Williams, says that updates are coming for Williams at
Silverstone. Modifications.
important, especially on the reliability front, which should prevent the recurrence of the Austrian disaster, namely the double retirement. We have two cars that can score points, Walsh said. We saw as many as 4 problems linked to the rear braking system, this for Sainz's single-seater, and we saw Albon who had a cooling problem. Vols insists our car is worth the top 10, and so that is Williams' goal even at Silverstone. How do you see Ferrari for Silverstone? In your opinion, among the mid-ranking teams, which one could do better? Can Hamilton get back on the podium? Let me know your opinion on all the topics we covered in the video. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any news. On the topic of Formula 1E specifically, on the topic of Ferrari, I'll leave you with some related videos here from Rastaduto. See you in the next video.